the last bit, that sometimes that's when we stop putting as much effort. So I invite you to change that narrative. And in these last few days, this is the second to last day, to bring as much energy as you did on day 1 and day 2. So I invite you to perk up, get in your seat, get ready to receive, and see how you can continue to deepen as we return to source and we come to a closing. But this day is just as important as day 1. So I invite you to smile, bring some more energy forward, bring your heart forward, and get ready to receive today's beautiful day, family. It's good to have you all.
It's a hungry, hungry world. Don't let them devour you whole. Come work on a building. It's laughing and full. It's laughing and full. Come work on a building. My intentions are these blessings are free. Not coming from me, just
thank you, Monica, for welcoming everyone. Good morning, good day, happy Monday. Happy Monday. How's your Monday so far? It's a good day. It's a good day to be alive. Every day is a good day to be alive. Yeah. So my friends, it's good to be together, you know, because I'm assuming that you being here means that you really want to take your life on. And what I mean by that is, like, you are in this life, you're clear that you're in this lifetime to make the most of this life, that you want to live not in a mediocre life, not even a good life, but an extraordinary life. Yes. Put E in the chat if you're here for extraordinary. If you're here for, yes, Nicole, I see you. If you're here for next level, amazing. And the beautiful thing about creation, about you being able to create, is that whatever's been whatever your past has looked like, doesn't mean that that has to be what your future looks like. And if there's been things that are really, really good, you just get to take that. You don't have to lose those, right? Sometimes people think that, like, it's only good for a moment and then something's bound bad to happen. No, it can actually just keep getting better and better and more joyful. So who's ready to claim that this year, we're in Q2 now, spring is here. And honestly, it can feel a little bit awkward for when the new year rolls around to really get enrolled in the new year, because it's winter, at least for most of us that are here, depending on the hemisphere you're in. But I know that for me, sometimes it can feel a little bit arbitrary to kick off the new year with all this new energy, this new momentum. But spring, it's like this natural. I mean, I'm looking at all of the trees and the flowers, everything's blossoming, everything's blooming. And in the Kabbalistic tradition, this is the new year. You're in the new year. And so it doesn't matter. Even if you started off this year not feeling like a lot of power momentum, who's ready to claim that starting right now, starting today, that you are all in for creating 2022 to be your best year yet? Put 2022 in the chat. So I just see you. I know that, like, okay, that's what you're up to. That's the type of life that you want to have. That's the type of year you want to have. The type of year, I mean, how cool would it be for a year from now to look back, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and be like, that was the year that everything changed for the better? Because we have these turning point moments. We have these turning point moments that make such a difference. You know, Love Day, I see you in the Facebook. You can come on Zoom if you want. It's the same Zoom that it's been all week. So I see you there. You're welcome to be in Zoom, and you're welcome, or in Facebook, and you're welcome to come on Zoom as well. And so, you know, I know that you're inspired. You're here getting inspired. You're here learning these new tools, but who knows that it would be helpful to actually get clear on what would be the highest leverage things that you can do, you can invest in, your time, your energy, your money, so that you can experience the shift that you want. Now, for some of you, you know that it's time for refinement. Like, life's good, things are flowing. You don't need a radical transformation. So if that's you, if you're just more in that refinement phase, because there's always more. I'm always growing. I'm always a student. Every most successful person I know, meaning that they're happy, healthy, and wealthy, like the people that I really look up, they're always learning. They always have a coach. They always have a guide. We're always investing in ourselves. That's nonstop, because there's always refinement. And who we are evolves in each chapter. So what worked last year may not work this year. Okay. And we have to actually, like, always be willing to refine our life. So if you're in more of a refinement phase, put R or refinement in the chat. And if you're more in like, all right, I do not like how my life's been going. I'm just not satisfied. I'm not truly fulfilled. Like, it's time for radical change. Just put change or put C in the chat and acknowledge, be like, I'm ready to do things differently. And you can have a really good life and still really feel that, like, it's time for a new identity. It's time to totally rewrite the story. It's time to really evaluate what's working, what's not working, double down on what's working, and like clean the rest up and have a new operating system. Yeah, always ready for change. I mean, that's the mindset of the person who's here for growth, for awakening, to live their best life. We're always yearning for like, what's next? And sometimes that does look like radical change, like a total new identity, recreating our iconic self. And sometimes it is just more subtle refinement. Like, I'm personally in a refinement phase, but a year ago, I actually went through, it was a time for radical change. And I shifted a lot of things. I let go of a company I was building. I moved. I started training as a triathlete, which was like a completely new reality for me. You know, it was a completely new archetype. So if you are a yes, you're like, yes, this is my year. I'm all in. I'm committed to growth. I want to invite you to spend 3 days with me. I know some of you already jumped in. Love day. I saw you registered. Amazing. Because you are in this container getting inspired, learning new tools, but there's a real power in going in immersion and really clearing out the space in your life to spend some focused time in community with my guidance in a really clear container that's going to take you through an arc of you getting to create your new template for success, of you actually looking at what actually needs to change, what truly are the changes that are going to make the biggest difference. What's the most simple, smallest changes I can make that will have the biggest leverage and impact in my life? Because sometimes we get a little overwhelmed, we don't know where to focus, and we get inspired and then we lose traction. Where success wants momentum. And so we need to know how to build momentum. And so over these 3 days, we're going to look at your life in a way that's going to create a new template for your success so that you can leave with momentum, whether that's in your business. I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs. And so the cool thing is that as we transform ourselves and we get really clear about where to put our energy and our focus and how we're looking at the world and how we're looking at our business just starts to flourish. But even if you're not an entrepreneur, but you're someone who wants to create your life, to be the CEO of your own life, right? Because we're all CEOs, either of a business or of your own life. Then this is for you. I've created this for you. And we're going to meet in April. Monica, you can put the link in the chat. It's a ceremony. So the container is really an integration of workshop. You're going to be going into deep processes. There's going to be healing practices. There's going to be guided, like you're going to create energy. You're going to be connecting with each other. There's going to be things called stretches where you really are integrating this new way of being and this new perspective in real time. You will actually transform and be changed within those 3 days. And I just can't create that in an environment like this. Like, we need to all be together in one space, being able to see each other, videos on, connecting. You're going to be connecting with each other. My greatest joy is to bring people together in transformational containers, because it's amazing what's possible in a short period of time with that level of intention. You know, sometimes we go for months or even years not having, like, just feeling like there's always this gap and just feeling like you're missing something and you can't, you know, and of course life is, you're on a journey. It's not like everything's going to be resolved ever in a 3-day period, but a lot can shift and be revealed and clarified in 3 days. And who knows here that when you're clear about your vision, you're clear about what you're up to, and you're clear about where to put your time and energy and what you actually need to thrive. When you're clear, there's power. And that you lose a lot of your power because you feel that you're not totally clear. Yeah. You know, like, with clarity and then the willingness to go all in on that clarity is so powerful. And so not only are you going to get clear in these 3 days, but you're also going to work on your mindset, your perspective of how you're looking at your life, so that there's so much more ease to bring yourself into whatever's next in this next chapter, right? Like yesterday, Andrew was talking about how self-discipline isn't required. It can be more pleasurable. you can actually like feel more freedom by having a freedom state of mind rather than a suffering state of mind as you go into everything that you're creating next. And I'd love to be there with you. You know, like I personally, like, I want to pour into you. I want you to really have the most extraordinary year. And a huge part of that just comes from your own declaration. So whether you join Kavana or not, it's called Kavana. Kavana means devotional leadership. Kavana means to do and create with intention and care. The word Kavana actually came to me in a meditation as a key for my body of work. But interestingly, that it's actually a Hebrew word as well. And it was so wild because the Hebrew word more or less means what the essence was that was coming into me. And I had never heard the word before. So it's like when we live intentionally, align with our values and our vision, and we bring our full self into something, like usually in Hebrew, it means to bring your full intention, your full self into a prayer. But to me, like the way you live your life is the prayer. And when we bring ourselves fully in with our full heart and our full joy, and we rejoice in that, and that all inness actually invigorates us because we're clear on what we're all in for. And it's not out of obligation or out of any like, a lot of times we have these arbitrary versions of success, or they're outdated, meaning it was true for us a year ago, but we are always evolving and changing. And so we need to really make sure that our template for success, the way that we're orienting our energy and our mind and our attention and our money, is actually in service to the life that we really, really want. And that in the process of our creation, it's joyful, it's pleasurable, right? Like to actually put more intention on the process itself, meaning your day-to-day, your moment-to-moment, not just on the outcome. And that itself will transform your life. And so we're going to be workshopping this over those 3 days together. And, you know, I do they have different themes, Kavana. It's basically a series of ceremonies. And I call it a ceremony because will be in a really sacred ceremonial container. I'm going to guide you through, I've led this all around the world. It's a sacred vow ceremony. And it's basically like making vows and a commitment to your higher self, to your purpose, to your soul. It's like a self-marriage ceremony. It's an inner divine union ceremony where you're making a vow to yourself in such a way that it pulls you forward. So you don't battle yourself anymore. So you just fall deeper in love with yourself, where you're so inspired by who you are and what you're up to that you can't help but love on yourself every day. It's something that like brings your soul and your spirit alive. You know, I'm here as a guide of remembrance of inner divine union. And oftentimes with my clients, that supports them in having that outer divine union with the beloved, but it starts in the inner. It starts between you and God. When that relationship is intact and strong and nourishing, your whole life starts to become like Eden, like Solar and I were talking about yesterday, a paradise of freedom and beauty. And then everything that's outside of you, your relationships, your business, everything gets reflected back to you with that quality of beauty. It's like when Monica and I play together, there's just like such rejoicing because we just see God in each other, and there's so much beauty inside of ourselves. When we come together, they're just like more, we're just like, yes, 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 yes. Like Solar and I were together yesterday, and we just see each other as pristine emanations of the divine. And that's because that's our own inner commitment. And so when we come together, it's like everything good is amplified. So I want to be that space for you. And we get to do that together as community, where we're going to amplify everything that's already true and good in you, who you really are. And you're going to clean up and like resolve some things that aren't working and that don't support you to thrive. And I see our guest here. So we actually are starting with our guest a little bit earlier today. So then you'll have a little bit more time with me at the end as well. So I'm going to transition from that, just like let that seed germinate in your heart and your soul. Thank you for receiving this invitation. And again, whether you join that 3-day experience or not, the invitation is to get so in love with yourself and your life this year that it flourishes, that it blossoms. Like, what if the theme for your year was something of that energy, blossom, expansion? because a lot, like so much can change in 1 year. I think about BC, who I had on, who in January of last year was broke, single, kind of depressed, didn't know what he's doing. And now has plenty of financial prosperity coming in. He's in a beautiful relationship, has a child, has a beautiful home in Denver, like is so on purpose. Like, you know, like in 1 year, everything that was really hard completely resolved itself out of his own devotion to returning to source and to that deep listening. So we'll pause that for now. And the most beautiful thing is that our next guest is actually going to bring us through a process to continue to build on that beautiful state, right? Because it's so much more easeful and fun to create our life, our day, when we're in a state of inner peace and inner trust. And amazing Ashley Withers is going to come, a beautiful healing practitioner. And, you know, she's going to actually guide a practice around getting us out of any anxiety, because even those of us who do our meditation, do our yoga, there can be it's so common. It comes up for me too, this like that we should be doing more, it should be going faster, something should be different, I'm doing something wrong, someone needs something from, like, there's so many things. And then just the state of the world and wondering what is yours to do. Like, so many inputs can cause anxiety for us, right? Like, we don't live so much in a peaceful, we're not like in the tribal community anymore, where our nervous systems are co-regulated and we don't have a lot of information and data to take in. And like, you know, we're living fast-paced lives. And so many of us feel that inspiration to create. But the like shadow side of that is that there can be anxiety. And so we have Ashley here with us to guide us through a practice. Welcome to Return to Source. It's so good to have you.
Hi, Charlene, and hi, everybody. Thank you so much for what a great intro. That was so perfect. And I just love what you're doing here. So I'm really excited to meet everybody. My name is Ashley Withers, and I'm a hypnotist. The modality that I use to relieve people of their suffering is called rapid resolution therapy. It's also known as RRT. It makes it a little quicker to say it. So RRT is not the same as traditional hypnosis. So the difference is that traditional hypnosis speaks directly to the participant's unconscious mind, whereas RRT speaks to both the conscious and the unconscious mind. And this causes even more powerful and more immediate healing. So you might be wondering, what do I mean by conscious and unconscious mind? So the way that I understood it when I first started training is that we refer to our conscious mind as I, and a lot of times we refer to our unconscious mind as self. So people say things like, I wish I could control myself, or I'm so mad at myself, or my least favorite, I hate myself. That self that we're referring to is our unconscious mind. So it's that part of us that causes our built-in and automatic responses to things. And like Charlene said, it has a lot to do with our nervous system. So these reactions that we have are totally normal. I mean, our minds are very high functioning and complicated places. So in these forms of dysfunction like anxiety are totally normal, but a lot of times they're not serving us. So in RRT land, we use things like stories and metaphors and language. And we've also put the participant into a trance state. And this allows us to communicate with both parts of your mind. So the changes that people notice are automatic, they're natural, and they're long lasting. And most people's issues can be resolved in a 1-hour session with a practitioner who's trained with us. So that probably sounds too good to be true, but I thought so too. I sort of entered this profession through the back door, if you will, meaning that I have some personal experience with how powerful and transformative RRT is. So I was referred to Dr. John Connolly. He's the creator of RRT by another licensed therapist who had been trying to help me, but we weren't really getting anywhere with my treatment. So when I discovered RRT, I had been suffering from what psychologists call complicated grief for over 8 years. What had led to this was when I was 20 years old, in the middle of the night, I had found my boyfriend dead from an overdose. I had spent about 2 years trying to help him with his addiction, and when I found him that night, it completely turned my world upside down. This whole ordeal was very traumatic, and it continued to affect me for almost 8 years afterwards. So when this event took place, I remember consciously thinking to myself that I was just going to bury it deep inside of me, and I was going to deal with this later. It was way too painful, and it was way too scary for me to face it at the time. I was really young and I was freshly traumatized, so I just buried it. I had no idea what was in store for me for the next coming years, but I knew it was something. I knew that what happened was going to have some kind of effect on my psyche, but I had to wait and watch it unfold over the following years. All the while, I was just wondering and searching for something to heal the pain that I was in. So I struggled with symptoms like what many people would refer to as PTSD. I had frequent flashbacks, I had trouble sleeping, I had a lot of anxiety, I had occasional panic attacks, I had really like irrational fears about death. I was afraid of everybody dying all the time, and it was really exhausting. I had bouts of depression, and all of this eventually led to substance abuse when I started drinking myself to try to be able to sleep. So I knew somewhere like deep inside of me that all these things were somehow related to this grief, but I just didn't know how to help myself. I tried all kinds of treatment and different kinds of therapy. I tried traditional therapy. I tried medication. I tried meditation. I tried acupuncture. I tried crystal sound healing. I saw a shaman. Like I tried everything I could think of to deal with this. But I still couldn't shake these like residual feelings of the grief that I knew I hadn't dealt with yet. So when I came across this type of therapy, I was taking another swing at traditional therapy. And in my first session, my therapist asked me if I'd ever tried RRT. I was told that somebody who was doing this could probably help me. And I felt that familiar sense of both hope and skepticism that I had felt every other time I tried to address these issues. And I also felt a lot of fear because I was getting really tired of rehashing this old story that every time I talked about, it felt like I was totally reliving it. And so I waited, I scheduled an appointment. And my first session lasted about an hour, my first and only session for this issue. And it felt like I had gone into some kind of time warp, and I popped out the other side as a different person. So he started out by explaining to me that my mind was working just fine. That was great news to me because it certainly did not feel fine, but okay, I'll take it. He then proceeded to fully engage me in a conversation with him. And he told me these silly little stories about zebras and animals and people and colors. And I remember laughing a lot. It was the most fun therapy session I had ever been to. And the best part was that he didn't make me relive any of the trauma. He didn't make me go into detail about that night. And I truly just enjoyed myself. So as the session went on, his stories about the zebras, the people, were making me feel better and better. He put me into a trance, and then he caused my perception of the death to shift. He explained to me that grief is caused by our mind attempting to reestablish a connection with the deceased person. Since our minds can't cause that connection to come back, it was putting me into a state of constant like grief and, just a general feeling of being upset because my mind wanted this connection back, but I couldn't get it to happen. So while I was in a trance, he helped me reestablish the connection to the person I had lost. We gave my unconscious mind the message that there is nothing else that needs to be done and that I didn't lose anything. That loss is just an illusion. So we gave my mind that good news. The entire session, I was totally present and aware of my surroundings, but I didn't really know what was going on. I knew that I could feel these tiny little shifts happening in my mind, one by one, until it felt like the grief was gone. I will never forget the way that I felt when I left his office that day. I stepped back out into the world, and it was like the colors were brighter. The sound of the birds was more beautiful. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. I felt light. I just knew something had happened. It felt so good that I was so afraid that feeling would go away. But it just increased over the coming days and months and years. So I was at peace for the first time about what had happened. I used to not even be able to talk about that situation without tears bubbling up. And suddenly I was able to look at it through clear eyes. And it was like I was watching a movie about somebody else instead of feeling like I was reliving something horrific. It kind of felt like I was reading a phone book or something. So I no longer felt any symptoms of PTSD after that day. And when I look back on that death, it's like I said, it's like watching a movie. Somehow this wizard man had fixed me, and I had to know more about what he was doing. So because of how extremely successful this session was for me, I ended up seeing him again a couple of more times to resolve some less serious issues. So I soon learned that he was also a teacher and that he taught classes on how to do for others what he had just done for me. And I was all in. I've been training with him ever since, and I actually lead his marketing department now too. So I dedicate a lot of my time to this RRT. So it's become my mission to share rapid resolution therapy with the people who need healing like I did. So if all the pain that I went through can equip me with what's needed to help other people that are experiencing emotional turmoil, then every moment of my own suffering was totally worth it. So now that you've all gotten to know me a little bit better, I thought it would be fun for us to do a quick little demonstration for all of you. So keep in mind that a typical session lasts about an hour, and this is just a little dose of the magic of RRT. So again, RRT addresses a very wide range of topics, issues such as grief, depression, anxiety, relapse prevention, anger, sexual trauma, phobias, mind-body healing, and there's so much more. But like Charlene said, I wanted to focus on an issue today that's super common and widespread, especially in our country. So the people on Zoom, if you could raise your regular hand, your human hand for me, if you've ever experienced anxiety, or if you know someone who struggles with anxiety, just wave your hand at me. I'll put my hand up too, because I definitely have experienced anxiety, and it's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. And it's been a big part of my inspiration for learning to help people. I remember at my first—
Don't interrupt, but just for those of you on Facebook and YouTube, you can also just write anxiety. Just be honest, is that something that you experience? Just to like, sometimes just naming it is powerful, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think, naming it takes it away from being part of me, because if I identify a lot with my feelings, and if I can separate it from who I actually am, then it's just something that I'm experiencing instead of it's being me. So, and I remember at my first RRT training, they had taught me, or they said to me that, what if you had the key to unlocking anxiety for people? Wouldn't that make you like everybody's best friend? Because, a lot of people spend months or years in therapy trying to address anxiety without getting anywhere. And if I can learn to, basically resolve it for people in an hour, like I really want that in my life. So when I'm working with somebody and I ask them, what do you think anxiety really is? People almost always give me the same answer. They tell me that it's fear, right? A lot of people think anxiety is fear. So the way that most people think of things is that something is happening that's causing them to feel something. For example, someone has to take the law boards, and they believe that the anxiety that they're feeling is caused by the upcoming exam, right? But that's not how I see things. I believe that the feelings of anxiety are being caused by the way that their minds are processing information about the exam. The only thing that our minds want is for us to survive, and then if we're lucky, thrive. So the prime objective is survive and thrive. So if the mind is perceiving something like the exam as a threat to our survival, it then causes feelings of what we call anxiety. Thank you. To cause us to take an action, such as not taking the exam. But we just spent years in law school and we're going to take that exam. But this just causes the anxiety to increase because your mind is repeatedly sensing this threat and repeatedly trying to get us to take an action that we're not going to do. So that cycle just continues. So you see the human mind is just a very complex and complicated system, and it's much more complicated than any other life form. And anxiety is an especially complicated process in our minds. So the good news about that is that this high level of complexity makes it even easier for us to take it apart and to break that pattern. So if I handed one of you a big boulder and I told you to take it apart, I could come back 2 weeks later and you'd still be staring at it, trying to figure out how you take apart a boulder. But if I gave you a grandfather clock and I said the same thing, it wouldn't take you very long at all to break one of those tiny gears and make it unusable. So anxiety is like that grandfather clock. All we have to do is remove something little from it and the whole thing is useless. So I found that simply just explaining what anxiety is does a lot to help people who are struggling with it. So let me explain what anxiety is as opposed to fear. Fear is when you are afraid of something specific, like the law exam. But anxiety is when the individual has become afraid of their own body's defense against the threat. What is that body's defense? It's the racing heart and the sweaty palms and your clenched jaw and racing thoughts. Those are our body's defenses. So anxiety is a fear of the body's defense or the threat. The defense of the threat. So when we're afraid of our own body's defense against a threat, the mind says, oh, you're afraid? We better send him back up. And then the defense gets even stronger. So then they're more afraid. And the mind says, oh, you're more afraid? I'll send in more backup. We need a stronger defense. And then the heart rate increases, the palms sweat, the mind races. Those are the defenses that we tend to be afraid of. So this sympathetic nervous system activity is hardwired as the highest priority, meaning that other priorities like eating and sleeping and mating are all overpowered and they disappear if there's an experience of fear. So like Charlene had said before, this is an evolution. This is part of evolution. It's so that we're able to run faster and bite harder in the face of a threat. But we don't really need to run or bite in our modern world. So these defenses that our body triggers feel really dysfunctional and uncomfortable to us. So there are 3 chapters to explaining anxiety, and I always explain this to anybody I'm working with. So chapter 1 is strengthening the body. So when we're experiencing anxiety, our body becomes a lot stronger. So like I mentioned, that makes it easier for us to run faster. When the legs suddenly become strong, we notice this, of course. And even though there's nothing really wrong with what's happening, it's alarming to us. When we're alarmed, the mind says, oh, there's a threat, we'll create more strength. The creation of this strength is causing sensations in the body. The heart beats faster, breathing becomes more rapid, and the mind says again, oh, you seem to be alarmed, we'll create more strength. And when this is happening to somebody, it's very likely that the person starts to feel weak because all of their other bodily processes are being slowed down. So since they're perceiving a threat, the only thing that matters to the mind is that they're going to be able to run to avoid the danger. The person senses these sensations as a danger themselves, only triggering the defenses to be increased. So if I was going in for a job interview with Charlene, our lovely host, and I'm worried that maybe she won't like me, that's a fear. But then my mind goes, oh, fear? Well, make your legs nice and strong. And now my heart starts racing. And now I'm afraid of 2 things. I'm afraid of what's she going to think of me? And the other thing I'm afraid of is what the hell is wrong with me that my heart is racing? These two fears get read by the mind as sounds like you need more strength. And so anxiety is just unnecessary strength. I've actually gotten into the habit of saying thank you for the unnecessary strength whenever I start experiencing anxiety, because me and my mind are on a team. We both want the same thing. We want me to survive and hopefully thrive. And so if I am angry at my own body's defense, that's not going to help me. But if I feel anxiety and I say thank you for it, then my mind gets the message that we're safe and that we're on the same team right now. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 of anxiety is oxygen and breathing. You'll know that when you get anxious, or if you've ever had a panic attack or seen someone have one, their breathing gets really rapid. So chapter 2 is breathing. One of the ways for us to get more strength when a threat is present is to get more oxygen. In order to get more oxygen, we have to breathe more. And the problem is every time we inhale, we exhale. So when we exhale, we are blowing out carbon dioxide. The inhaling is fine because we're getting more oxygen. But exhaling and blowing out carbon dioxide causes the pH level in the bloodstream to shift. And that causes us to feel like we're not getting enough oxygen, when in reality, we're actually flooded with it, more than enough. But we feel like we're not getting enough, so we're inclined to breathe more. And this then causes us to exhale more. And this goes on until the mind realizes that we're safe and the danger is no longer present. So that's chapter 2. Chapter 3 is about what's happening psychologically. We know that if there's a threat, it's our inclination to gather information about the threat. Say we're at a party and you come up to me and you say, "Hey, I just thought I should tell you that one of the people here is talking about how he's planning on hurting you and your family." I'm going to say, "Who? Tell me more. What's his name? What else do you know? Tell me everything." Of course, I'm going to want to know details. And this is actually a really intelligent thing to do. The military calls it gathering intelligence, gathering information about a threat. But what happens for humans is that we're threatened not only by what's going on out there, but we're threatened by our own response to the threat. So our mind begins gathering information, but also gathering information about ourselves and thinking, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Why does this happen to me? Right? So now that all of you understand what anxiety actually is, I would like for us to release some of it. I already know that I'm in the company of some highly intelligent people, because the simple act of you being here today shows me that you're really committed to sharing the best parts of yourself with the world. And we want to make the world a better place for everybody. So it's my intention that your minds are entertaining only what has value. So I'm seeing you all with your minds clear, with all of your joy and your creativity and your powers readily available to you. I'm seeing you get about a week from now, getting ready for bed and thinking about the past week and just really appreciating the fact that you felt calm and peaceful in situations that used to cause discomfort. So that's my intention for all of you. Does that sound okay with people here? Sound good? Getting the yes? All right, great. So that means we all have the same intention, we have the same purpose, and we have the same vision. So already our energy is coming together. And when our energy comes together, energy coming together has to expand. And that expanding energy is fuel. And fuel is powering the transformation that is already underway. So I'd like each of you to visualize a color that is representing this expanding, powerful energy between us. Imagine this color as a bright, healing light surrounding you. Got it? Okay, so next, choose a wild animal or bird that you find inspirational. I want you to really see this animal too. Is it flying? Is it running? Or is it laying still? Just really picture it and what it's doing. Okay, good job. So you are all already really good at taking in things that have value and getting rid of things that you don't need. Your bodies do it 24/7. Every cell is constantly releasing what it doesn't need and absorbing what has value. These cells are involved in larger organizations that do this too, such as the digestive system or the respiratory system, always absorbing what has value and releasing what does not. So since every cell in your body knows exactly how to do this, and now as we intend to expand what you're already an expert at doing, it simultaneously releases preoccupations such as anxiety. Seeing as it's already being done perfectly, we're just going to add one tiny piece. So I'd like for everybody to sit up straight and take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, slowly close your eyes and think the word release. Become aware of your breath with your eyes closed, and each breath in, you're all absorbing healing energy. With each breath out, you're releasing old patterns, and you're releasing energy that is no longer needed. Become aware of your posture. And as you become aware of your posture, you also become aware of your shoulders and release any tension. You're aware of your forehead and releasing the muscles there. You're becoming aware of your jaw, and continue to think the word release as you release the jaw. You may notice that the mind is only conscious of one thing at a time. It can effortlessly release the jaw, then the forehead, then the breath, then on the sound of my voice, and back to the breath. These things are always happening as the mind and body are always absorbing and releasing and becoming aware of different sensations. And as you're doing this effortlessly, your mind opens. You're noticing that you're surrounded by that healing colored light that your mind chose to represent this transformation. And as you continue to breathe and continue to focus on your breath, you'll notice that you can't help but breathe in this healing light. With each breath in, the healing is deeper. With each breath out, you release. Imagine now that you're holding a bow and arrow. You're pointing it at the sky. As you take a deep breath of that bright colored healing light, on your next breath out, I want you to fire that arrow into the sky, thinking the word release. See that arrow flying away, disintegrating and fading as you say to yourself, release. And you now see that inspirational animal in your mind, surrounded by that colored healing light. These symbols chosen by your own mind are speeding up the shift and fueling your transformation. As you do this, you're tuning your mind to our shared intention, and you're telling your mind what to do in a way that is simple, elegant, and powerful. The shift is automatic. You take another deep breath in, and when your lungs are full, you can find your way back up and open your eyes. Hey, good job, everybody. I hope that that was helpful and you were able to release a little anxiety there. I love that process because I can do it anywhere. Anytime I'm feeling a little anxiety, I take a deep breath of my light. My light is blue, everyone's is different. I take a deep breath and I release and say thank you to my own body for my own defenses. So that's all I have time for today. I would love to, work with anybody if anybody wants a private session or something. I do want to do a quick shameless plug for RRT too. We are hosting a 60-hour training starting in May. It's open to anybody. It's not just therapists. We actually can help people get licensed in hypnosis too. So we are starting that in May. I'd like to offer anybody here $100 off of that. So if they want to get my info from Charlene. And we also offer a weekly class that's free and open to the public where we just do live work with people. So you can volunteer to have something worked on, or you can just watch. It's a really fun class every Monday. So if you're interested in that, again, just get my info from Charlene. But that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Yeah, everyone, I'll be sharing her contact in our gift thread where I've been sharing everybody's amazing gifts that they're offering. And so I'll give that link to the free workshop. And, I just want to say one thing that's really powerful that you shared, which is when I get on stage to speak, like not this, like an actual stage, I will still feel, even though I love it, my heart will start racing. And I just go, wow, body, thank you for preparing yourself to meet all this energy, because that is what's happening. And so it's like such a simple reframe, and then to ground yourself in it being okay, right? That's what I got from you. It's like the anxiety is actually, there's nothing wrong with it if we actually just like soften into it and say, thank you. So
right.
For that beautiful, simple practice. And thank you for being here, for your generosity. Have a beautiful day, Ashley.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
And because you all just keep getting blessed and blessed and blessed, we have another amazing woman here with us, Erin Claire. Welcome. So Erin is an incredible human design practitioner, and she works with leaders all around the world, both on the individual basis and in their organizations and collaborations. And something that I have found so useful for with human design and other astrological type of sciences is actually understanding the nature of relationships, because we can actually be truly happy and fulfilled and joyful and peaceful if our relationships aren't rooted in that as well. So if you have trouble in your relationships, it doesn't matter how happy you are here, because it's always going to be not flowing, right? And so I've really loved that modality in partnership collaboration, and we'll get a little bit into that. But I want to just welcome you and have you lead us in with like, how does human design support us to return to source, meaning to connect to ourselves, to know who we are, to know how we navigate relationships, and to like really feel connected to what we're here to do and who we're here to be. So welcome, Erin. If you could just like dive in with that question.
Yes. Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone. That's what human design does. I think that for those unfamiliar, human design is based on your time, date, and place of birth. It gives you kind of a roadmap to how you're designed to operate at your best. And so I think what it does is it does return us to source. It helps us understand like what is our innate wiring and how are we each uniquely wired to thrive. And the magic of human design is that it reminds us that we're all wired to do things really differently, whether it's how we parent or collaborate or make decisions or partner or manage a team or build a business. And I think we often get tripped up when we try to kind of mimic someone else's path or do what we think we should do. And I think human design often just like, it feels so familiar to people. Like my experience when I share human design with people is not that I'm telling them anything new. It's more that I'm giving them a language to kind of articulate things that they have always felt so deeply and never given themselves permission to step into. And so I think it returns us to ourselves in all the ways. And the last piece that I would share on that is that so often when I sit with people, when I share their human design, they're like, Erin, this like reminds me of how I was showing up when I was 5 years old. Like before I had like any self-consciousness around how I was supposed to do things, or before I was really conditioned. And then we often kind of return to that way of being later in life. So I think it just returns us to how we're designed to do things. And it also returns us to our uniqueness.
Beautiful. I'd love for you to reflect on how you've used it. So let me give a little bit of context. There was a phase of my life where, and I'm curious for those of you on Facebook, YouTube, here in Zoom, let me know if this is similar for you, where I so wanted answers. I so wanted to know who I am and how to succeed and what my path was, that I was going to a lot of astrology, whether it's human design or Gene Keys or Western astrology or Vedic astrology. Like I wanted to be told. It's like I wanted the answers to come from outside of myself almost. And so while I got a lot of insight, I still felt like this kind of confusion, because or maybe it was like I wanted to go to a psychic. It's like I wanted someone to tell me. Can anyone relate? Can you just say like yes in the chat? And so I'm curious how you, Erin, have used this template, this blueprint, as a way to inform and reflect, but also support your own, just that own deeper knowing, where it's not even about the human design so much, but it's like that gives you the opportunity for reflection. It gives you a language. And then how have you kind of like let that inform though your own experience of your empowerment and not necessarily be like so defined by human design?
Well, I think one thing I would just say first off is that like I can never look at somebody's design and be like, you're going to do this and you're going to meet this kind of person. Like it just doesn't give us that. It actually like what it does is it like reminds us what to trust within ourselves, whether it's trusting our gut or sleeping on things. And so like as annoying as it can be, and people are like, what should I do about this? I'm like, well, I can tell you how to discover that, but I can't tell you that. So I think that like that's actually why I love human design, is that I think it returns us to ourselves instead of giving the authority to someone outside of us. And I think that is so relieving. I think in terms of my own journey, I think it's just gotten me like way less in my head. I think that I for so long wanted to know where it was all going to take me, and like what's going to happen and where am I going to be in 5 years. And I think like I've learned that aligning with my design, basically aligning with myself, means like making the most courageous, aligned decision and trusting that like that will take me all the way there. And so I think that like that's been a real relief to like not need to like make sense of it all, but to just like stay aligned in the moment and know that like that will lead me on the perfect path. And so I think that that has allowed me to just be like so much more surrendered to my journey and also so much more in trust of it. And I've just been like enjoyed it so much more. And I also just love what you said about relationships. I think it's like the most amazing tool in relationships to just be like, how can I love on somebody that's really different than me and not expect them to do it like me? And so I think that's such a powerful application of it.
And we'll go there in a moment, but I just want to really land this because I think a lot of people in the audience have probably looked to astrological based sciences, whatever you might call it, for answers. And what I'm hearing in you is like, helps you to remember what's already true within you. But it's like the point of it is to return you to yourself and still to access your own answers, your own connection from yourself.
100%.
It's not from this like person who's going to predict something for you and put your, like you said, authority outside of yourself. But the human design can actually give you insight of how you even listen, how you receive information. Like for me as a self-projected projector, I get to talk things out. And I hadn't been doing that because you know what? I had some trauma around someone telling me that I, like a past partner telling me I talk too much. So I like was working everything out on my own rather than doing what for me a strategy is to actually like hear myself talk something out loud. And it wasn't until human design that I thought, oh, okay. That actually makes a lot of sense for me.
Totally, and so I think that that's, again, and also human design is a tool. Like, I think I always remind people, like, if it's useful, take it in. If it's not, let it go. And I also think that like, what matters most is not whether it's true. It's like whether it's useful, And so I think that's always kind of what I ask people. And I think I've had clients that will like read it and they're like, I don't know. And then a year later, they're like, okay, fine. Like, I get it. And so like, we can't always control when it's going to land. But I think, again, like I said earlier, like I think it's the magic of human design to me is that it's not unfamiliar. It's not like I'm telling people something and they're like, whoa, this is all this new information I have to integrate. They're like, oh my God, I have felt these things for decades and now I have a language for them and now I can communicate it to others. And now I'm just like going to give myself permission to like build my business and be in partnership and operate in this way because I've always felt like it was right. And like now having a stranger validate it, I just know that it is, And so that's, I think the magic is that it's so familiar to people. It's not new.
The usefulness, I think just beyond human design, everyone, there's been a lot of wisdom shared. We're on day 9 of a 10-day experience. And so you've learned and received little snippets of all kinds of practices and tools. And I brought everyone on because they're all incredible practitioners and modalities, right? And so within all of it, it's like to just actually be willing to use what's useful and in this moment, because if it feels overwhelming to say like, oh, I got to change all these things, like you're not going to follow through, right? And so where there's the path of most ease. And so for me in human design, there's been little nuggets that at different moments, I've been like, oh, I'm going to like focalize more of that right now, because that feels natural for me to say like, oh, let me actually orient to that right now. And that can shift, right? And something might integrate and become a way of being. And then a new key that you weren't quite ready, because sometimes we're so out of alignment with what's true for us that there can be a lot of radical shifts to actually like return, because we're operating so much based on whatever society, right? And so sometimes there needs to be a radical change. For a lot of times it's just refinement. But Erin, what would you say to people who like, does that happen where you will get a client and they're just realizing that they're like so out of alignment with their design, and no wonder they're exhausted or this isn't working? And what do you guide when someone just like, it's okay, it's time for radical shift? How do you guide them on that next step?
Yeah. And I think one thing I'll say is that I always say human design is like equal parts relieving and confronting. There's often a part where it's like, yes, I have a language. And then another part where it's like, oh my gosh, I've been living so out of alignment. That was totally my experience when I discovered my design. I think that, yeah, I think that when people realize that they're living out of alignment in a lot of ways, which happens often, it was true for me too. I think that it's one small step at a time. It's not about like, how can I remember all this stuff? It's more like, okay, like, if I'm a self-projected projector and I'm here to talk things out, like how can I create a bit more space for me to like talk things out with people that I trust, or voice record and just kind of see what clarity emerges from that. So I think that it's often the smallest steps that kind of give us the courage to kind of scale up into those big changes. So I think that it's never about integrating it all at once. It's never about like, you must quit your job tomorrow, but it's about like, how can you start to make small decisions and small moves that are much more in alignment with the way that you operate? And I find the more that you do that, it just like, it has a cascading effect, And I also think that like human design is a lot of information. It's kind of endless. It's a lifelong study. And so I think I also remind people that like, it's not a system to memorize. It's not a system to be like, how can I know every single gate? But it's a thing to embody. And so like, I encourage you to take like 1 or 2 or 3 pieces and kind of begin experimenting with those, and know that you can always come back for more.
One small step is true. Just a little bit of refinement, like one direct, right? If 2 boats are going off and they're 1 degree apart, eventually those boats are going to be really, really far apart. And so there are moments, I think sometimes we go through these moments in life where we feel that energy to make a bunch of change. And there's that natural energy to do it, where you really can kind of create a new identity and make some radical shifts all at once. And sometimes that's appropriate. I know I've had a couple moments in my life where it's like, okay, like it's time to like die and be reborn. But most of the time, the thing that's more sustainable is like, be willing to integrate or shift or do one practice. Because when you build on that, there is radical change over time. And rather than trying to short circuit yourself with like, I've got to change everything right now. But like, if you already have a big full life, you've got kids or something, you're just going to end up resenting yourself most of the time. Right.
Absolutely.
So the thing that I've loved the most about human design, it's 2 parts. I mentioned already the relationships, and you kind of spoke into this, which for me, it's given me a language, which is part of what I've been doing with everyone in the language of the universal principles or the spiritual laws, like the Hermetic principles. They have different names and different lineages. And it's like, we all know that these exist in a way, they're all playing out, but there is a power in giving language to it, because then the mind can get on board and understand it and have a perspective and like be able, when there's a language for something, you can actually relate to it in a conscious way. So the language of human design has helped give me a language for myself of how I relate to myself, which has helped me make decisions and really supported me in my collaborations. Because then I actually know how to put language to asking for what I need, what works, what doesn't work. And so if you could speak a bit into that, Erin, and just like what you see is made possible when, and even just, I would just say, just the process of coming together to people to receive a session together. So rarely do people invest in their relationships, whether that's in love or in work partnership, like even less in work partnership, which is so important, you guys. Just that process of intentionally saying, I want to get to know you. I want to understand you. I want to know how we best communicate with each other. Human design, like just that is so profound. And then within the container of human design, it just like, it's quite deep. And so would you speak a bit into that and the partnership aspect, relationship aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that so often we get tripped up in partnership, whether it's romantic or business, when we want someone to be like us or like different than what they are. You know what I mean? Which happens often. It's just like, why are you doing it like me? Or like, I thought you were this and you're not this. And I think the magic of human design is that like it not only reveals like how we're uniquely wired to operate, but it also reveals like how to really best support and love on the people close to us. My husband and I have opposite designs in every single way. He's also my business partner. And I think that if we try to be the same, like we kind of be doomed, you know? And like I think that because we appreciate how different we are, it's actually really magical connection and collaboration. And so I think in relationship, like you said, it's like I think it's actually one of the most important things to invest in, but often people like are not thinking about it at the outset. It's often like my team is like really everyone's struggling or the relationship is struggling now, let's talk. It's really nice to do it early on. And I think the cool thing in relationship is that it gives you really practical tools. It's like, you know, sitting with a family last week, it was like how to best support their projector daughter. You know, it was like, oh, like you really need to give her one-on-one time. Like that's how her energy works. And she was like, oh my God, like I knew that and I stopped doing it. Or like, you need to invite her in, you need to ask her open-ended questions. Whereas other people, you might be like, ask them really specific questions, you know, like, so there's just like a lot of very tactical stuff to like know how to best support the people around us. And I just find that there's so much more flow and harmony. And I love sitting with teams and partnerships because more than anything, it really brings us like compassion and empathy into the dynamic to just be like, oh my gosh, like I've been so mad at you because you're different. And now I like actually love your uniqueness. And how can I support you in that? And there's also like way deeper layers where you can literally like layer charts on top of each other and see all these kinds of things. But I think similar to what I shared for the individual, it reveals all these like energetic dynamics that are at play in relationships. So you stop taking it personally. You know what I mean? Like even like with my partner, one small example is that like I have an aspect in my human design where I just like, I set the emotional temperature of my space. When I'm like on an emotional high, it feels really good to be around me. Like when I'm on a low, not so great. Like I just project my emotions out into the world. Whereas my partner basically takes in and amplifies the feelings of everyone around him. And so this like became a little bit hard because like I was in a low and he's like, what's going on? Is this mine? Like, and it was just like this whole thing. And now we've discovered like, when I'm in a low, it's like such a beautiful time to take space. Like, not because there's anything wrong with me. It's more like, I've just got to feel my feelings and he doesn't need to take it personally or get lost in them, you know? And so it's been really just kind of beautiful to start to discern what's mine and what's his and how to kind of really relate through that. So it's such a cool tool in partnership. And I think I found it so useful with my team, with my partner, with my family, all of it.
So you guys, I have co-founded a few companies, always in partnership. I've never, other than my own services, all the companies I've done have been usually with a co-founder, sometimes bigger teams. And I've actually had a lot of challenges in co-founder relationships. Like, I'm just going to be honest that they've been more of an initiation for me than I've had more co-founder partnerships than love partnerships in my current stage of life. And they have been quite the initiation for me. And through that process, I actually started coaching co-founders because I realized that they are our next most intimate relationship next to our beloved. And they are one of our greatest opportunities for transformation and awakening. Just like I believe that any intimate partnership should, like, the point of it should be to know yourself, to grow, to become your best self, to bring out your best self, to self-realize, to awaken. And that gets to be at the center of a love relationship. But I also believe that could be at the center of co-founder partnerships. And they get to be tended like an intimate relationship if they're going to truly thrive. Because one of the biggest risks of co-founder companies is actually the relationship itself is actually one of the greatest risks of the company thriving. And so when I work with co-founders, I always bring in a human design practitioner. Again, just that intentionality in itself is potent. And then something you said, Erin, like there's like the real tangible, okay, you communicate like this, you might need more time to make a decision, right? There's the real tangible, which is supportive for the mind and strategy, but also something that you said, which whether it's human design or just a way of being, it's like when we want somebody to be different than they are, it causes us suffering. When we have expectations for somebody to show up a particular way, we suffer, and then the relationship will suffer. And so to have a modality, whether it's this or another form for you, that actually helps you love people more and be more accepting and be more loving and like know how to actually have your own needs met without the other person needing to change and without the other person needing to meet all your needs is so important for your own peace and joy. Like truly, yeah, I can see on the Zoom, I see Vaughn, I see you smiling. It's like, yeah. And we get all tripped up on this, both in love and in collaboration. And so, Erin, if you could say like, Oh, the wind just opened my door. I'm going to close really quick. So if you could, hold on, things are moving. Spirit says yes to good relationships. So this is kind of a unique question, but I would love for you to share if you could offer like a prayer, like through your human design work, what is your vision of what's possible in relationships, both in love and in collaboration? Like, what do you feel that the human design work is actually in service to in terms of relationships in the world?
I think that human design reminds us that we need each other. Like, I think in the fact that it like reveals how different we are, like there's part of it that's like, oh, if we're all so different, does it bring us further apart? And I feel like when it reveals how different we are, it brings us so much closer together, you know? And so like, and I think that that's kind of the magic, is I think on a very intimate level of like bring us closer together in partnership, you know, just to be like, wow, I really see you. I know how to support you. I know how to kind of like support your becoming the best person that you can be, but also in teams, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm a projector. I'm good at the things that I'm good at, and I suck at a lot of other things. Like, I just know that I can't do it alone. And so I think that like I love working with teams. That's how I got into this work, because it just like reminds us how each person plays such an essential role. But when we are expecting them to play a role that's different than what they're meant to play, like it disappoints everyone. And so I think my feeling is that human design, like, it just brings a lot more empathy and compassion and understanding into relationships. And it brings us so much closer together. And I think when we really understand how different we are, whether it's business or life, like we make things happen, you know, and it's like not about productivity, but it's like a lot easier to make things happen as a team when you're flowing together interpersonally. You know, it's a lot easier to have like a really harmonious, like growth oriented relationship when you really appreciate how different you are. So I think it just like allows us to focus on the right things and like get our distraction and energy away from all these things that like aren't very useful.
Mm. Doesn't it feel like a deep breath, everyone? It's like, yeah, like our relationships can thrive and have us thrive truly, and they can be so fruitful. Okay, so for people who are familiar with human design, so I know that we have a mixed audience, and I saw some people right there, they're not familiar, but for those of us that are familiar, what would you say to people who, like, especially the projectors, but projectors, reflectors, even the manifesting, just anyone that's not a generator type? What would you say to someone who, because typically, maybe you could affirm this, my sense is that typically it's the non-generator types that are really out of alignment with their design overall, because
Everyone.
right, because societally
Yeah.
it's very generator oriented. And so what would you say to the people who are like really trying to play the generator role, and they don't know, it can be so hard to break free from that?
Yeah. And I think, and one thing I'll say is that I see every typing out of alignment, because even though we live in a world of generators, they're often out of alignment because they don't realize that prioritizing their excitement is good. So I'll mention that in a second. But I think, you know, so for manifestors, and I'm sure that we can share links later, but there's a link, humandesignblueprint.com, if you want to look up your type, which you can do now or later. But for manifestors, reflectors, and projectors, those three types, like none of us are meant to be consistent doers. And we live in a world of a lot of doing energy. So we're often trying to keep up. And so like, obviously we can't go deeply into it, but I would remind the projectors that like, you are much better suited to be like a leader and a guide than you are a doer. And the more you take rest and the more you honor the ebbs and flows of your energy, the more you'll really realize this, you know, and this was such a big lesson for me as a projector. I would remind the manifestors that you're here to initiate. Your gift is at the beginning, not at the sustaining, you know? So really like the more you take rest when you need, the more you make yourself available for all the new ideas that you're here to bring to the world. And your gift is like getting things started and then handing things off. You know, often so many manifestors get so burnt out in the maintaining because they don't realize their gift is in the beginning. And then for reflectors, you know, their energy ebbs and flows every day, every month. And so I would just remind them that like they just see and sense things that so many people don't. And so, you know, when you're in spaces that feel good with people that really cherish you, it allows you to kind of use your energy sustainably. If you're trying to keep up and do more, it's likely very unsustainable. And then I would remind the generators and manifesting generators that like, yes, you're here to be doers. Like you have this amazing energy to build and create and make things happen. But you're not really at your potential unless you're actually lit up by what you're doing, And so such a big lesson for you is prioritizing your excitement, doing what like lights you up as much as you can, because that benefits all of us. And honestly, as projectors and manifestors and reflectors, that will give us energy. Like when you're lit up by what you're doing, it will spill over and give all of us energy. So I would remind the generators and manifesting generators how precious your energy is and how of service it is to the world to actually treat it as like a very precious and powerful and valuable resource, and to really prioritize your excitement as much as you can.
Okay, but wouldn't you say that everyone should be following their aliveness and their excitement?
Yes, but in very different ways. Generators have to use up their energy every day to sleep well at night. We don't have that same need as projectors. We can just be like pretty chill. We're like, we're good,
Totally. I could chill all day very happily.
100%. But they wake up with a resource of energy and like they need to use it up to sleep well at night, And so, but if they don't use it up in ways that are satisfying, they're like so burnt out and restless. Whereas when they use it up in ways that really light them up, like they can it's such a delightfully spent kind of feeling. But I think what's so important for them is they power the world with their energy. And so when they're actually lit up, like I said, it will give us so much energy because we amplify where they're at. So we're all meant to do what we love, but in very different ways. And so I think for them, it's about using up their energy in satisfying ways so they can kind of go to bed and be like, I'm so delightfully spent by what I made happen today.
That sounds yummy. Delightfully spent.
Like my new favorite phrase from my friend Amber Shirley. Yeah.
I mean, truly, and it's a slightly different quality for any of us, but there is something sweet about just like ending your day feeling at peace with your day. For the projector, deliciously spent, meaning like you poured your energy fully into things that actually like filled you up. And I feel that same, like when I get to the end of a full day that was like totally in alignment with my joy and my creation, there's something so nourishing about when I get into bed, I'm just like, yes, like, like one of my prayers for humanity is that when we get in the bed at the end of our day, we have no regrets. Now that means like sometimes for me that my day was super relaxed and chill. It doesn't mean that like I did so much, but it's like I use my day intentionally. And then that prayer in the bigger sense is that like my prayer is that all of us, when we get to our last breath, whenever that is, that we feel such peace, that we gave this life our all, that we really lived it in our unique way, in the way that like felt so good, and that we end our life hopefully when we're old and wise with grandkids or great grandkids, but that there's this peace. And I think that peace really comes from like that day to day of how we lead our lives in the day to day, and then how we go to sleep at night, right? If we go to sleep feeling exhausted, but not the good kind of deliciously spent, like depleted or resentful towards yourself or so on, or regretful, like we're just taking our life force away, And so if you're going to sleep anyway other than peacefully, which has a lot to do with how you used your day, right? Where you brought your own energy, like it's really a place to assess and like, okay, what gets to shift so that I can like go to sleep with like a full heart and being like, yeah, you did it. You did another day. You made it through another day. You thrived today. Like, woo.
Totally.
So Erin, any closing thoughts, anything that you'd love to share about human design for us to wrap up together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there are a lot of amazing systems out there, and also sometimes systems are not the right tool. But I think that what I would remind people of is that like human design teaches us that we are all wired to do things so differently. And so I would just kind of bring that belief into your everyday life, especially if you're like managing a team and you're like, why can't they do it as fast as me? Or if you're with your partner and it's like, why don't they decide as quickly as me? And it's just like, often because they're not meant to, and often because they have a really different gift. And so I think just to kind of hold this belief in your mind of like, I like operate in a certain way, but it doesn't mean that others operate in the same way, and so kind of just trusting that. And if you guys want to dive deeper, should I share a little bit? Is that useful too? Yeah. One, I share a lot on Instagram at Erin Claire Jones, and we just have a new account, Human Design Blueprint, that we're sharing a lot there. You can look your design up at humandesignblueprint.com. And I created a discount code if you guys want to get your blueprint, which is basically like a 55+ page book all about your unique design. And the discount code is return to source. And those are all my things.
Thank you, Erin. And I'll share that code, everyone, and that link in our gift. I'll update it this afternoon so that you can tune in if you're feeling inspired to go into Erin's world. And actually just following her on Instagram, she shares all these little tidbits. So They're nice reminders. If you at least know your design, it's a more complex thing than really understanding it by yourself. But even if you didn't get an in-depth reading and you just started to tune in, she gives these little sweet, like 1 sentence, 2 sentence reminders about your design that are general, but they're enough at least to have you reflect and be like, that, at least that's how when I see them, I'm like, yeah, okay, let me like reflect on that. What would that look like when I live that in my life, embody that in my life? And am I living that? So for me, human design is a powerful opportunity for reflection. That's the main thing it has become for me, is like, let me give me something to reflect on so I can tune in with myself to feel whether I'm actually in alignment. So not to be defined by human design, but to use it as a method for me of self-inquiry. That's my practice with it now.
Yeah, it's an awareness system. For me, it's like when I'm in resistance, I'm like, ooh, what are all the ways that I'm not listening to my design, or I'm in flow and I'm like, oh, I see what's happening. So it's really reflective, and it really is a powerful way to just be aware of how to find more flow in our lives.
Yeah, more flow. Here's the stabilized flow. Thank you so much, my love, for being here. You're such
my pleasure.
It was so good to connect with you, and
yes.
Beautiful day.
Amazing. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here, y'all. Have a beautiful day.
Bye. And I'm curious, everyone, YouTube, Facebook, are you familiar with your human design? I know some of you responded before, and again, it's a tool. There are many, like she said, there are many tools, and I would advise you to all be mindful of feeling like you need to go run to everything that's been shared this last week. So notice any part of you that's like, okay, I need to do the RT, and now I need to do the human design, and now I need to learn EFT, and now I need to learn this. And make sure you're taking a deep breath. Let it be like, we have all these tools, which is such a blessing, meaning that everything is healable. Everything is figure outable, as Marie Forleo says. Everything is resolvable. We have so much time. So Nicole, I want to speak into that. Okay. I want to have that integration, because in one way, what I'm saying is like, yeah, we have time. There's no urgency. You don't need to be in stress trying to resolve your stress. So if you're trying to grow from a place of anxiety and scarcity and stress, you're downward spiral. So, but when there's a genuine joy and a genuine spark towards something, now sometimes that genuine joy spark is out of acknowledging your pain, is out of acknowledging what's not working, right? Oftentimes we do grow or change because we get honest with ourselves that something does need to change. But then the energy in which we approach it, be mindful of that. Now, so in a way, yes, there's time. We're on a lifelong journey, and you're perfect just as you are. And actually, if you just shifted a couple simple things in your life and your perspective of your life and didn't even change much, you could have a radical shift. Like I've had moments in my life where I don't change anything externally. My income doesn't change, my home doesn't change, but I just shift a nuanced way of seeing the world. And all of a sudden, everything is more beautiful. And then usually from that, the external also starts to shift and reflect that. But also what I want to say is that life is now. And so a lot of people there's too much complacency. So you have to know what pole you're on and what's being called for. Because if you want to live the most beautiful life, that can happen right now. If you're willing to invest your time, your energy, to be in workshops like with me and Kavana, to have ongoing guidance. The way that my life has evolved the much is to be in transformative containers often. So I'm enjoying my life just as it is, and always looking for the thing that's going to grow me to the next. I'm always calling in a mentor or a guide that's modeling something, some way of being, or something specific in business or whatever it is that I would like to experience. But to me, it's out of joy now of yeah, I want to have that experience in this lifetime. Yeah, being wealthy sounds like a fun experience in this lifetime. Why not? Having divine union in this lifetime, I'm in for that. That sounds like a really fun way to have my journey of self-realization, And so there does get to be an immediacy. So I wanted to, different than urgency, there's a slight quality difference, because we were talking about with Azria, right, of letting go of urgency. And what that means is the stress in the system. It's the go, go, go. It's got to do now. It's something's wrong, something's not working. And then you approach everything from that energy, and then nothing actually really changes. Or if it does, you burn yourself out. But immediacy is being in response to what is like driving you, what's right in front of you, and being willing to take action in alignment with that and with your all in self, because life is now, it is not next year. Do you really want to spend another year being exhausted, Love Day? Like, that doesn't have to be your reality. You know, like, we don't have to spend another day, another year in suffering, because there are all the tools available to us. But my invitation, because I spend so much time just looking for all the tools, my invitation for myself and for all of you and in my work is, when you return to your own center, you return to source, it will be clearly revealed what tool it would be most supportive to you. What personal practice would be the most supportive? What step or shift in your business or in a relationship? So to me, it's this mix, like my work and what you'll get in Kavana when we come together for 3 days. It's a mix of remembrance of who you really are, your God self, what your soul came here to express, to learn, to be, what it means to be a human on this planet right now, that intersection between human and holy. And the intersection is like, okay, like, let's connect more deeply to the holy part of you. And you get to design your life in accordance with that. That's the creator part. So you remember and you create, and it's both. That's the intersection of human and holy. And so you get to design in accordance with that true spark, with that true natural self that so many of us are like just a little bit out of alignment, out of balance with. And so as you listen more deeply to that, and you're actually able to discern more clearly, and that connection is strengthened, and you're able to commune more clearly, and that becomes a way of being, that becomes your devotion. From there, then you get to have the joy of creating, of making more beauty, of adorning yourself and your life the way you want to, like becoming your iconic self. If you were the superhero of your own story, what choices would you make? If you wanted to live a great story this lifetime, if you wanted to be able to tell a fabulous story to your kids or grandkids about your life, how would you live it? How do you want to role model to people, to the people you love, to your children, to your partners, to your friends, a way of living? Like, okay, if you were the role model for the world, how would you live? If people modeled after you, how would you want to be in the world? You'd probably want to model being free, being happy, being joyful, being healthy, right? Being in integrity. And so, not to like ask that question from this super pressurizing place of like, I don't want to be responsible for the world. But let me tell you, if you have any qualms, I think that's the word, qualms about the state of the world, and you think this should change and this needs to change and this needs to change, first look at what gets to evolve in me so that I can be the embodiment of the type of person and leader that this world has. Because then also you uplift the people around you, and then you have more playmates. Or if you are not loving the people that are around you, by not loving, meaning you don't feel like you have really good mirrors around you, people that help bring out your best self and are truly helping you remember who you are and are uplifting you, right? You may have lovely people, but you might not have, as you commit more deeply to that journey yourself, all of a sudden those people will start to show up. The people around you pull you down. Like, I'm not personally interested in having anyone around me that pulls me down. And so the fact that you've allowed for people around you to pull you down is a real sign that you're not actually loving yourself. Like, I'm just going to be kind of fierce right now. And now sometimes it's hard. It's like, but that's my family and that's this. There can be people in your ecosystem that are not at your level of consciousness, and you can find how to have right relationship with them. It's not about saying, no, I'm never seeing my family again. That's not what I'm saying. But notice where you're putting your energy, your attention, and what's showing up around you. If you want more beauty around you, if you want people and environments that lift you up, then like actually take the time to invest that in yourself and be clear with the universe what you're ready for and what you're creating. That's the creation process. Like there's this mix of the magic that happens of when you really are clear in yourself and you're energizing your own well-being, all of a sudden, and you are in the prayer of like, bring me the people that I'm meant to do life with, they will show up. And that is the kind of magnetic aspect. But there's also the action part, because we are here to take action. We live in a 3D world. And so there's all this talk, right, about 5D and 7D. And I don't even honestly totally know what all of it means. All D's. It's not like, just not my language. But what I do know is that we live in a world of matter. And while we have an infinite, limitless soul, we live in a realm of matter, which means that action is required. Now, so many people are in do action, but you want to cultivate your magnetism. You want to cultivate your intuition. This is like the balance of alpha and omega, or feminine and masculine. So the feminine in this gender pole is magnetic. It's like what Solara and I were talking about yesterday, just like filling yourself up with with your divinity and being delighted and in pleasure. And as we were talking about this too, like in the pleasure of this life and the senses of like, oh, how good it gets to be. And you're like filling yourself up and you're becoming light and you're becoming clear, and you energize yourself and you energize your cells, and you drink good water that nourishes you, and you like, yeah, you like get filled up, and you're also in the listening and receptive space of being able to receive life and listen to your downloads and listen to your intuition and listen. And from that place, penetrate life. Be clear about your vision, your goals, your impact, and take action in alignment with that. We used with Andrea today. She used an arrow, like a bow and arrow, to imagine releasing. I thought that was really beautiful. I use a bow and arrow visualization for something slightly different, which is like a metaphor that when you take the time to sharpen your arrow, when you send it off into the world, so arrow meaning your intention, your vision, when you take the time to actually sharpen that, meaning you take time to refine that, get clear on that, when you send it out in the world, it's way more precise. It's way more likely to hit its target. If you're just like sending energy out and you're not clear, it's a little chaotic. It's a lot of energy out. It's a lot of depletion, actually. And so I invite you to join me for the Kavana Awakened Leaders ceremony. And it's about awakening, because I stand for a world of awakened leaders. I want people who are leading this planet at the highest level, meaning in like presidents and CEOs of big companies, and also just leaders in every community, and every mother and every father, or everyone who decides they're a leader, which means you have influence on somebody around you, basically, and that you're taking sacred responsibility for that influence. That's what a leader is, whatever capacity you choose to lead at. Now, a lot of my people are entrepreneurs, and so we're leading movements, we're leading organizations, we're having direct impact with people, with our clients. And I stand for a world of awakened leaders, meaning that the decisions that we make are from source, not from our ego. Because when that happens, the beauty that gets rippled out and the transformation that happens on this planet is so profound. And it gets to happen with more ease and more joy in your system. Because to me, that's the point. We're not here to feel like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders and we're trying to fix everything, at least not my perspective. Everyone's got their own perspective. My version of activism is, how good can it be? And how many people can I support and enroll in living a life that is their best life, that is as how good can it be? How good can it be? Yeah, Philip, like leading from your North Star. And so this work is actually about getting reconnected to your own inner compass and being clear about what your North Star is for right now, as it can evolve. I mean, for me, and we've talked about this, and I invite this for all of you, if this feels true, like my ultimate North Star is my awakening, is my self-realization, is becoming my best, most true, most expressed self. And then the expression of that in a year or in a month evolves. It's oriented to that. And with that as my North Star, my ultimate North Star, then I can never do it wrong. Did you get that? I can never actually do it wrong. Can't actually make a wrong decision. but you can make really, really great self-honoring, supportive decisions for the journey and the life that you want to lead. You can stay complacent longer than is necessary. It's still going to be all good because you'll get the learning and the lesson when you need to, and you'll suffer as long as you suffered to the point where you're like, okay, it's time for a shift. And that will be your journey. I am in a phase in my life where if I have any suffering, and by suffering, I mean anxiety or stagnancy or fear or not experiencing the impact I want or not experiencing the wealth, whatever. Like for me, my version of suffering isn't like I'm super deeply depressed. Like when I suffer now, it's subtle, but there's suffering states. And when I am in those suffering states, I get really curious with like, okay, well, what gets to grow in me? Like who's my next guide? Like what is the tool I get to call on? So that I don't stay there any longer than is necessary. It's like the suffering comes and I get the medicine. And I invite you to be in that of like, okay, something comes up, like it doesn't have to be so. Somebody shared, I'm forgetting who it was, but they're going through something with their family. And so they're experiencing grief and there's some challenges. And it's like they felt, this is so common, like felt guilty that they could also be experiencing joy and happiness while tending this thing that should be sad, hard, bad. And you can be in grief, grieving something or moving through a challenge and initiation while still having joy in your day. They can simultaneously exist. You don't have to be in suffering. That's a choice. So Monica, will you put the link again in the 3 threads? And if you're feeling inspired to join, we meet in a week and a half. If you can't join those dates live, do your best it's April 7th through 9th. Do your best to be there those dates, because the sooner you're in this, the sooner you're going to just keep amplifying all of the beautiful work we've been doing. And like, you'll be able to take all this inspiration from this week and really land it in your system, in a new way of being, in a new operating system. And really be clear about like what's actually needed for you, to thrive right now, and to be really clear about that in a really grounded way. I will do it once more if those dates absolutely don't work. So message me, but like, let's come together in April. I know it's coming up soon, but I did that intentionally so that we could really like stay together from this container and be together really soon. Okay. It's going to be really good. And it's not just a Zoom meeting. Like, we are going into an event. We're going into a ceremony. Yes, we'll be in the computer, but I'm going to create an environment where it feels like we're together. You're going to be connecting with each other. You're going to be doing things in real time that are going to directly impact your life. We'll practice together. There'll be some deeper healing practices. Like, yes, love day. When you're willing to commit, she says, I'm canceling stuff to do this. I can't tell you all how many times I have canceled things because I got an invitation that's like, oh, that is exactly what my soul called for. And yes, my mind's like, fuck, I gotta like figure that out. And I feel out of integrity, but like, be in integrity to your soul. That's the most important integrity. And then if you need to renegotiate agreements and commitments from that place, it's clean and clear. Integrity is not just, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. That's an aspect, and it's nice to be in that level of integrity. But integrity, first and foremost, is to our own intention, our own vision, and be willing to do whatever it takes for that. And then when that impacts somebody else, we just acknowledge it and renegotiate and like enroll them in our own vision for what we're up to, get them inspired, maybe invite them with us and whatever we're doing, so it's all good. Sometimes we do our best to orient to time and space and like keep things structured. And sometimes you just got to be like, I trust life and I trust the timing of this, so I'm going to make it work. So go ahead and join us. I'm giving you guys a super amazing price on this. Normally when I do my 3-day virtual workshops, they're between $700 and $2,000. And this is only $297. Okay. Which is like to come. I'm also offering it live. You'll see when you go to the page, I'm going to do it once in May in Austin, Texas, if you want to come together and do it live. And even that, like, normally my in-person retreats they're expensive, and it felt right to make this accessible to everybody here, because I want you to have this and I want you to be able to gift this to you and not have money be the thing that this connects to you. Love Day, if it's not Austin because you're in the UK, there's other opportunities. I do a couple of retreats a year within a bigger container called Threshold, and I can share more about that later. And so we will come together live. No worries that it won't be the May one, unless you can make that happen. I know it's a big trip, but I know you're a mama, and so we can plan farther ahead. I'll let you know what else I'm up to so that you can have it on the calendar, work out childcare, and have that all sorted. Okay. So Sivan, yes, I would love to share with you. And I see your baby here. How sweet. Oh, it's so cool that even when you become a mom, and your plate gets way bigger, you can still be invested in yourself. And now it's now there's a realness to it. Now it's I want to be the best person I can be for my child. I want to heal and resolve whatever I can heal and resolve inside of me so that I give my child the best chance at not having to forget who they are. So we don't, all of us have so much things to work out, most of us didn't have parents that were in these spaces of consciousness. And so then what's possible with the children when they are raised by people like you? Wow. What, when we're grandparents, I mean, I know we're all different ages. The people I'm looking at in Zoom right now, we're all probably pretty similar in age, but I know we've had a range. But I'll just say for my generation, when we're elders, I feel like this world is going to be so beautiful because we're putting all this beautiful energy in right now. And then the kids that are being born by us are so amazing. They're creating, by age 7, I see these stories with kids with these big platforms and these big projects. And I'm just yes, if we just allow their brilliance and we trust that they're just as ancient and wise as us. Every soul I believe, has been here many, many times. And so they're ancient and wise. Yes, they came a holy soul into a little human body that is working itself out and trying to figure out what all these feelings are and how to digest milk and all these crazy things. But nonetheless, their soul is so wise and all-knowing. And the more that you can support them to stay connected to that, they're just going to be oracles for all of us, because we forgot because of traumatic environments, but they don't have to forget so much. We can help them remember. So it's even more important that you take time to have support and have containers and resource yourself too, because it can feel like a lot. But you know what? Some of my most successful entrepreneur friends grew their businesses the most when they had newborns, which was seemed impossible. But it's amazing your capacity, but not if you don't have some systems of support and someone holding you. I'm thinking about, it's a little bit different, but Monica, your sister-in-law, is that you'd call her, my dear friend, Ashley, when she got pregnant, and she was in business building mode. And so when she got pregnant, she was a little but I'm building my business right now. She had big goals. She was in that maiden energy of creation and building. And she didn't feel quite ready at that time to have a baby. But through the process of being pregnant, her business just took off and grew because she approached it differently. And you know what? I guarantee you, she just had her beautiful baby, which is Monica's niece. Magical little being. I guarantee that Ashley's business will grow again this year with way less effort, because there's just this different quality that you bring to it. But you know what? She only did that because she had an amazing mentor through the whole process who helped her see that, who helped her move past limitation into what was truly possible, and helped her reorient and shift her approach that was more aligned for her current design, which was making a child. Is a whole different design. Yeah. Amen. We are clear. They are clear vessels. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to end the live, and then we'll have a little more time here in the Zoom room, but thank you everyone. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our last day. We have 2 more guests. It just keeps building because you're just so blessed. And I look forward to seeing so many of you in Kavana in a week and a half. Till tomorrow.